And welcome back to the hottest marriage show in the galaxy. It is I, John D, a.k.a. Too Much, and his better half,
Kanika,
a.k.a.
Do.
And we are doing Too Much Podcast here to entertain you with wonderful stories and enlightenments in our journey of becoming a better relationship and better parents and better people. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing well. You?
I'm doing well also. Thank you for asking. Specifically, I really wanted to just jump into this because when we were walking this morning, and you mentioned this story, and I thought the story was it was different.
It was,
but I'll let you go into it, and go for it.
It took place about 4 years ago, but I was going down the rabbit hole of YouTube, and it told a story of, and you guys probably have heard of this family, but it told the story of a family of 13 kids, and the ages ranged from 2 to 29 at the time, and they had been abused all their lives, shut up and locked into their home. And it brought up a lot of different topics when we were talking. One, the parents, the father was an adult and the mother was 16 when they got married. They came out of a religious, a strict religious community, to which they used the Bible often and heavy on certain scriptures in order to keep the kids in line. It brought up the idea of safety or lack of safety with homeschooling, because that's how they kept them kind of shut in away from everyone else. Also brainwashing, and when social media can be safe, actually. So it's a family of 13 kids, 2 to 29. There was one particular daughter. She was the 8th daughter, 17 years old. And one night, she and her older sister, the 29-year-old, decided to escape and save themselves and their siblings. It ends up that the 29-year-old, I guess she got afraid. She went back in the house, but the 17-year-old ran, contacted the police, and they were rescued. So parents, adult 16, have their first child, send her to school, and she's the stinky kid, right? Goes to school, clothes are not always clean, the house is dirty, so she kind of smells like the house. Didn't really make friends well. She recognized that later on. That was probably why. But she never went back to school after 3rd grade. Her parents continued to have children, and they ended up homeschooling all of them. So it brought up the idea of, well, let me go further. So they bounce around, isolating themselves further and further out. They were in Texas at first, in a city, and then they moved out into the suburbs and then out into the country. And then they moved to California. Like, I don't want y'all to think that these are no like dumpster people. The dude was an engineer for Lockheed Martin, and then later on he went on to another big firm as an engineer. So they had the money. But it was just, there was something that just was not screwed in tight with these parents. So the children, when they discussed their life, the 17-year-old, I guess it all broke when she got out, got on the phone with a dispatcher and started explaining that she needed help, somebody to come and save her siblings. They were locked up in chains. When they weren't behaving, they ate ice and ketchup and mustard and bread, to eat. Their parents would buy pies and then let everybody smell them, but none of them could eat them. When she described how her parents ate, she said they ate really well. They ate fast food and frozen foods, but they weren't allowed to. She talked about how they were afraid of anything that they may say where they may get locked up. So it went from getting locked in rooms to being chained to their bed or in a dog kennel. And they got to go out a couple of times. Like their parents would get them dressed up and nice and clean and then take them to like Disney World one year, or they renewed their vows in Vegas and they took their kids, and their kids are in this video in this Vegas chapel and everybody looks happy. And one of the things the parents told them, one of the kids talked about a scripture that talked about minding your parent, and then later on talking about how if you disobeyed, you could be stoned. So they told them that their behavior gave their parents the right to kill them if they needed to. And so when we go out here, y'all better act right. Don't talk to any strangers. And you better not say anything, because there's a thing called Child Protective Services. And if they come, they're going to take everybody and they're going to split you all up and you'll never see each other again. So the 17-year-old was talking in an interview, and she was talking about how she thought that meant that they'd all be split up and sent to different countries. So you definitely didn't want that. We all needed to stay together, right? And so outside, the parents would post these pictures so it looked like the family was great. What was interesting to me is anybody who knew the family, the kids were 2 to 29. The 29-year-old, when they found all of the children, the 29-year-old was 82 pounds. The 17-year-old, when she was on the phone, she sounded like she was 7. So when the cop finally showed up to help her, she was about a block away from home. She was in the street because she's never out by herself, so she didn't know that she had to be on the sidewalk. She had never talked to strangers, so she was already nervous talking to him, but she said she had to will herself to do it because she had to save her siblings. And when they asked her address, she had taken an envelope from home so she would know her address, and she's reading off the zip code. And the dispatcher is like, you got to give me some numbers and a name of a street. You know, she didn't even know how to read her own address or to direct people on where she was. So, and just to give some background, the parents, they started leaving the kids in the house and just going on trips. And some of the older kids had phones so the parents could get in contact with them. That's where she got this phone. But at the time, the phone was turned off. And you know, when phones are turned off, they'll still call the 911. So she was able to take the phone and go call 911. But when they got out, they said the 13 kids came out. They had to be in the hospital for about 2 to 3 months to recover because they weren't used to being around a lot of people. They had curated a specific team of care providers in the hospital that only cared for them so that they were familiar with whoever was helping them. They said some of the kids couldn't even walk. The thing that pushed the sister to go and finally escape was that 2 of them were chained up and they didn't necessarily get released in order to go use the bathroom. So it was like they defecated on themselves. They wet their clothes. It was a nightmare. I could only imagine by listening, you know. And one of the funny things we always talk about how social media is horrible. You know, it can be dangerous. It can be horrible. But the 17-year-old had ended up using the phone and finding Justin Bieber. And she liked some of the songs. And she was watching, you know, him on social media and was like, you know, can life really be like that? And she would like sing songs and post them. And she figured if I sing songs and I post them, then people will follow me and maybe they'll help me. Like I can figure out what to do. So she's posting these songs, and this one person, he's like, do y'all notice, like, commenting, do you notice she's always in the same room? Why is it always so dark when she, you know, why is it at nighttime whenever she's posting? And so he ended up messaging her, private messaging her. And she told him what was going on. And he said, that's not supposed to be happening. You need to tell the cops. Like that's abuse. You're not supposed to live that way. And she said, then she realized I was right. Like, so this isn't right. Something's wrong. It took her 2 years after that to escape.
Wow.
She and her older sister planned it. And I guess the final straw of just saying we got to bite the bullet was when the 2 sisters, she said the sisters that were chained, they would wake up and cry because they were in so much pain. And so they ended up coming and getting them. Well, she left and she went and got help and they all came out. At the time, I think the last interview I watched, like I said, this happened 4 years ago. The last time I watched the interview, it was like a year ago. And one of their attorneys was explaining, 5 of them were living in apartments, and but they were all really close, like in the same subdivision, I think. 5 of them were in college. I don't know if they were the same ones, but just to give you an idea of the age range, it did go from 2 to 29, but the 8th child was the 17-year-old. So there are 8 children now who are, 21 and over now. So most of them were adults. So in our conversation, we talked about how, social media was the way that she actually figured out that maybe I don't have to live like this. Homeschooling, and how homeschooling, it allows children to be lost in a way, because there are no checks and balances. I remember when we were homeschooling our kids, there was no wellness check. But when kids go to school, every day they're getting wellness check. Kind of like your teacher is a mandated reporter. They're watching, you know what I'm saying? So there's a better chance of being able to identify some of these abuse cases in just how kids, when the parents were leaving, and they were leaving the older children to punish their siblings. And so when the kids stepped out of line, older siblings had to lock up their siblings, and it hurt. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of comments came from that. A lot of ideas came from that in the conversation. And one of the things that got me was the oldest one. She only got to go to school up to the 3rd grade, and then her parents pulled her out. But after all of this broke, one of the kids she went to school with wrote a letter online and said, I remember this kid in my class. And he said a number of things about how he remembered how everyone treated her. And he said, this is truly a lesson in teaching your kids to be kind. Because we didn't know she was going home to hell, and we were going home to bedtime stories,
Yeah.
So that was just a conversation, just all the things that came out of that. Like a 16-year-old marrying a man coming out of a very strict religious community. Then you got, and then the mom was like obsessed with buying kids clothes and toys, but the kids couldn't wear the clothes and they couldn't touch the toys. So the abuse, the neglect, the 17-year-old, when she said she was talking to the dispatcher, and the dispatcher was asking her to describe her parents, and she said, I don't really know much about my mom. She doesn't talk to us. Like, she makes sure that there's food in the house, and that, that's with quotation marks, because we talk about mustard and ketchup, right? But she said she makes sure that there's food in the house, but she doesn't talk to us. So we don't really know much about her. So then I'm just wondering about the mother's mental health, and how long has she been racked up like that? Not only the obsessive behavior, but the mistreatment, but also being a young bride, having a lot of kids, homeschooling a number of kids while he's gone, like all day long. Not to say that any of the behavior was acceptable from the mother, but to say it was problems compounding on problems to spill over onto those kids and result in such horrible treatment of children. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Just thinking, like, as a parent, when I hear those stories, it makes me feel like I don't know enough, of course. But I really do feel like parents in their mind are doing the best thing. And I'm wondering, when you say mental health, like, where were both of them mentally? Why did they think that was acceptable?
I mean, and I think that using the idea of mental health, when I'm talking about mental health, there are people who are diagnosed as something that they can't help. They were born, with some type of deficit or chemical imbalance, whatever the case may be. I think other people are mentally ill based on their experiences. You can be abused and in turn abuse others. I think So when I talk about mental illness, I'm always like, it's not to me to say that there aren't just people that are just horrible people, because there are people that are just horrible. They know exactly what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes they don't value other people, and that's another level of mental illness. Because, like, are you a psychopath? You know what I'm saying? But it's the there's so many factors in there. Like, first of all, where is his head? Second of all, where was hers before she came in here as a kid and became a mother of 1 million children? And then the residual impact of all the mental health that, the rest of those kids. Like,
yeah. And another thing I wanted to mention was when I told you, like, what the younger kids and the options that they had is probably foster care. And I was thinking, like, I don't know anybody that was in foster care that said it was a great experience. And then I was thinking, like, when they go to foster care, are they going to say they wish they were back in the situation that they were in? And like, will the kids in the foster care be like, like, at least y'all had a family, like, it's so many, like, you can look like, the different things that their parents did that foster care kids don't get any type of opportunity for. And I'm not saying that it's good, but depending on where you're standing, it doesn't look as bad.
Well, one of the interesting things is I used to be a foster care social worker, and there were children who they were coming from bad places, but they'd rather be there because they love their parents than to be somewhere where they were treated better in foster care. Not everybody gets treated better in foster care. I definitely know that. But in this situation, I had one client, she would run away every weekend to go back home. And I was like, what? She said, I'm just letting you know I'm safe and I'll be back. And I'm like, you can't be there. Like, you have to come back. And her take on it was, it's my fault my family is in this situation. And I need to make it as normal for them as possible. So she runs away and goes back home. She would say she would keep herself safe because there was a perpetrator in her home. And she said she would keep herself safe. She just needed to go home as much as possible. Now, when I would ask her about her foster home, she'd be like, it's great. Like, she recognized that it was a good place. The foster mother was caring. She was really nice, and she had a foster sister that she really liked, but she had to go home. And she felt an obligation because she put her family, by exposing that she had been abused, she put her family in the system, and it stressed everybody out, and it was her fault. You know what I'm saying? So it's interesting when you feel like I'd rather be there, because it is my family. Kids feel at fault for some of the things that go on because the parents make them feel like this is all within their power and their control. But yeah, it's sometimes it's not as good, and then you have to think also, most of the kids were adults, but they weren't mentally adults to be caring for their younger siblings. Because some people would be like, well, 8 of the siblings were adults. Like, nobody could take the other kids. They got years of work
exactly
to do.
I was about to say, like, even though you mentioned a 29-year-old, I mean, it was like, dang, she could have just left. She only knew what she knew.
Yeah. They said when they got him, the 29-year-old was 82 pounds. When they got him to the hospital, some of them couldn't even walk. So, like, not only, like, you're not eating your brain development, your understanding,
social development.
Yeah, even their speech. Somebody was talking about how when they were talking to the kids, some of them you could tell that they didn't have any real language training other than what they were learning
inside
from each other. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just, I know this might be controversial, but if that's all you don't know to leave. And the only reason why the 17-year-old was exposed to the idea of leaving is because she was exposed to the internet.
Yeah.
So I was mentioning to Kanika earlier, like, just think about slavery. You're put in this situation and there's no social media. You just know that you don't like the way that you're being treated, but where are you going to get clothing, shelter, and food from? So, like, if you do have an escape plan, where did you get that information from? So it's like you only know what you know.
Well, and they had been so sheltered to the point where the girl was like, I didn't even know that I wasn't supposed to be standing in the street. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I didn't know. So how are they supposed to know even how to piece together a life or that it was possible? You don't know how those other people, even if you're looking at people online, you don't know the circumstances in which they got to that life. So is that even possible for you?
Yeah.
And what if I do this and it's even worse? Is it possible to be worse? I don't even want to find out.
I know.
So, and that's not only, that's something that we've heard with enslaved people, you know, fear of being sold off to someone that's even worse. Foster care, kids being afraid of the next home being even worse than the home they're in now. So sometimes when they're in bad placements, they don't necessarily indicate that it's as bad as it is for fear of going somewhere worse. So I understand. I guess at some point though, that sister felt like something, you know, the person online was like, that's not supposed to be happening.
You know,
I need you to understand that that's abuse and you need to go.
You know what I was wondering also, I don't know if they mentioned it, but did they have any relatives?
Right. They didn't. I only watched a few interviews. Maybe it was a 6-part interview and a couple of follow-ups with the kids themselves. Well, grown women now. But nobody talked about their family. Like, where did they might have mentioned where they originally came from, but it only talks about the parents starting their family in Texas and then going to California. So I don't know. And that's what I was thinking about too. Is like, if anybody's really familiar with their family, when they're looking at these pictures of these family trips, they don't know the ages. Like, they weren't looking and seeing this almost 30-year-old woman that looks like she's 12. And
But how did they know she's 30?
Right. But I'm saying, if it's family and you know when the family started, you know what I'm saying? If I'm a cousin and I was there when you got married and I know you had a child not long after that, who's this 12-year-old? Where's the 30-year-old that I should be seeing? You know what I'm saying?
It's almost like the parents were just two examples of these kids that we're referring to, and they met each other. And they didn't have any family that they wanted to be associated with.
Well, and that's the thing, when they established that they had come from a religious community, my assumption is that, you know, they grew up in this place where they had families that all came together and, you know, there was some connection. There was something. There was a structure that they were coming from.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I wanted to mention was when we were talking about could it be worse? So when they were doing the final sentencing, and they, you know, sometimes they do survivor statements, and there was a son who spoke, and then he later gave the statement of a younger sister, and the younger sister said that she loved her parents and she thanked them for introducing her to their faith, and that she's thankful for that and she loves them. And it further let me, like, you know, that right there, I do believe in having faith, and sometimes it can be a really great way of giving you strength. But the way the faith was presented and manipulated in a way that made it okay for them to be treated the way they are, I fear for that person and their continued growth in their faith. Like, what was it that they were necessarily thankful for in what they learned? What are they going to continue to do as they get older? Or how are they going to express that faith or believe in it, interpret it when they grow a family? And it's, you know, there's so many questions.
That was my next part too. Like, their relationships that they create with other people are going to be very rocky.
Yeah.
Because no matter what they tell the person or what they reveal, they're still going to be so sheltered in so many parts. Mm-hmm. And it takes a very strong person to deal with a person who has not had the opportunity to heal and realize what they have gone through wasn't normal or regular or beneficial to their well-being. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I really, I don't know. I just look at, like, just think about this. If they do develop relationships with other people to create families, what practices are they going to bring that they think is okay?
Well, I definitely know that, I don't know, but it's my expectation, considering this, that the state will provide extensive therapy services for them. But also,
They don't talk to strangers.
They don't talk to strangers, so that's gonna be a hurdle. Number one, a barrier. But also, you don't have to. You know what I'm saying? As an adult, you don't have to. So depending on that experience and what they're willing to, as an example, they showed the two sisters a picture of them as a family at their parents' vow renewal, and the oldest one, she was shook. She couldn't, the one who exposed everything, she kind of looked at her sister like she didn't know what to say or to do, but she was worried. It looked like she didn't know what her sister's response was going to be like. Is this okay for us to even look at this? The older sister started tearing up and she said, I wanted to die there. But they're like dancing in the video and smiling and everybody looks perfect. And she said, I wanted to die.
Did you think that they looked happy when you saw the video? Knowing that what you were watching, could you see anything to be like?
No. If I didn't know, I wouldn't have. And this is the thing. But after I knew, it was like those two sisters, they were, one of them, she made sure to get back into the camera and they made sure they had this one smile plastered on their face the whole time. So then it's like you look and then you realize everybody was playing their part that they were told to do. And it's crazy because I'm thinking, the amount of work it will take to get them to a place that they need to be mentally, like they may never even make it to a place where they're really healthy to have a relationship or feel confident that they can even have a relationship with someone and it be a good one.
Yeah.
Especially when the people who are supposed to love you have treated you this way. You know what I'm saying? But like I was saying, there are certain things that they're going to struggle with even addressing. And if you're an adult and you're struggling with things, you can make the choice to not get help, to not participate, to not do what's necessary. Mm-hmm. And so you just hope that they're going to be open to all the help they get. Like, I'm scared of strangers and y'all telling me I got to tell everything that happened. And I've been tortured. I got to tell everything that happened again to somebody I don't know. And I don't even know if this is going to help me. How was talking about it going to help me? So there are things that I pray that they're healing. And it's, I was like, how did I never hear about this? We were overseas at the time. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious at how big it might have been while we were gone, with people talking about it. Cause maybe everybody's like, we already know who this is. You know what I'm saying? But, it was sad.
What if, the parents believe that their kids had a better life than them? That's a dark place when you can look at this and the parents are like, we did everything we were supposed to do, and they really meant it. Like, you should imagine how I grew up. Mm-hmm. If I think that they gave them a better life. We didn't go to Vegas. We didn't have ketchup and ice. Yeah. So it's like, it's perspective. And the reason why I said that is because I was thinking as parents, you and I, what could we be doing to do more? Because could you imagine if there was a parent, a group of people that says, I couldn't imagine growing up like they in Dallas. Like their parents were so inconsiderate. They did this and that. So it's like, what can we do to ensure that we're doing the best? Because in my mind, I would like to believe that all parents really believe they're doing the best that they can.
Well, you know what I feel like? I think we take our cue from Day in Dallas a lot of times. We definitely use our background and we mulled over all of the aspects of our growing up and what to throw away and what to keep. but also taking cues from them. Often, I think we do temperature checks just to see, how are things going? What do what do you want? What do you hope to do? And then trying to, what do I want to say? Mold their world to fit where they see themselves going or where they want.
Absolutely.
I do feel like we're doing that. I'm hoping we're doing it well. But yeah, it's all you can do is really hope. And like I was saying, I think in a previous conversation with you, one of the things that's important is being willing to heal, being willing to get better and to heal from the things that hurt you. I was telling Day, I don't even know if I said this on here before, but she and I were talking before, and I told her I had a villain story. I had a villain origin story. And she was like, "Mommy, you are not a villain." And I was like, "No." I said, when I think about how I grew up well, I'm going to say that. But I'm also going to say there were definitely turns where it could have gone really, really bad. There are definitely experiences and influences that I had in my life that I could have taken a couple of quick turns and I would not have been this person. And so I was telling her about my villain origin story and how, I've done some things to, and even you, how you had a potential villain origin story. And I said, it takes you looking at your life and being willing to heal and being willing to get better in order for you to have a healthy relationship. And I wrapped it back around to say today, you don't have time to heal other people. So my hope is when you get into a relationship, you are constantly trying to make sure that you are healing yourself from anything that may hurt you.
Or anything that we may have done.
Or yeah. And I said, and looking for, when you do find someone, make sure that there's someone who also values that and is open to that and is doing that. Because you can't save other people and you ain't saving yourself. You got to put the mask on you first before you put it on anybody else. And so how it ends up panning out, your background and what you understand to be healthy and not, and how it's going to have a ripple effect on your relationship with your partner and then your children and your children's children. It's like we can't afford to do stuff like this, you know what I'm saying? And some of us know and some of us just don't know.
Yeah. And hopefully at some point our podcast episodes, our Rescriptions are able to help some of you to find ways to increase the quality of life for your kids. Well, not even for your kids, for you also. Your kids can't be happy unless you're happy. But is it anybody in particular you want to give a shout out before we get out of here?
I had a client when I first moved to DC and became a foster care social worker. There were two of them, and they were in the same home. And when I left, we became friends on Facebook just so I could see how they're doing. And one of them, I was able to continue to watch one of them. I don't know where she is, but I want to give a shout out to her. If she ever hears this, her story, it's never their fault. It's never the kid's fault. But her heart just stayed so soft. You know what I'm saying? She wasn't hardened by her situation.
Is there anything that you could say for her to know if she ever heard this, that she know it was her without you saying her name? I don't know if you want to say her name. I guess you don't have to say her last name.
No. But she knows who she is. She had a daughter not long after who looks exactly like her, and I still watch her on Facebook. We're still friends.
Oh, okay.
And and I think that I just want her to know that, like, she's one of those successes, and everybody wrote her story to not be a success, and she did it anyway. And I think that and I'm really proud of her. I'm really proud of her because there are people who started with more who are less, who are doing, they have less than what she does. And I just think that she's constantly just an amazing person to watch. And I look forward to seeing her daughter and that outcome as well.
Definitely. Shout out to you. I guess I want to give a shout out to anybody who recognize the distractions that they have and remove them so that they can move forward. A lot of times your distractions are put in front of you and you never asked for them, but you thought it was your life and you just kept it in your life because you thought that was your life. But those of you that come to an epiphany and realize that distractions are everywhere, and most of the time you can't get to your goal because the distractions are ingrained in your everyday routine. And those of you that figure that out and you're able to move, I want to give a shout out to you guys because that's a really difficult thing to do. And distractions are everywhere, and they could look like anything and they can make you feel good, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right thing for you. So those of you that are getting to know yourself and breaking it down, having reflections, keep it up. You are being watched and people are looking for examples to live a better life.
We're praying resiliency over everybody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Y'all make today better than yesterday. Don't worry about anything you can't control. Be great on purpose. Boom.